Hi, I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Welcome to this special international edition of Ask Rob and Rob. We've got two questions which, unusually for this show, are focusing on geopolitics and international law. But don't worry, we have not gone way off piste. It's still property related. So we'll hear those questions in just a sec. But first, a reminder of how to send yours our way.
It is so simple, my friends. You go to propertyhub.net/ask, where you can then phone in, leave a message via that webpage, or submit your written question, which may then appear in the Sunday Times this Sunday or a future Sunday. So that is how you do it. Super simple. And that is how our first guest has got his question in. Let's hear from Adam.
Hello, Rob and Rob. It's Adam here. Thanks for 10 years of continued podcasts. It's given me a lot of guidance and allowed me to invest and refurb properties with confidence from Singapore and build up a little portfolio. I'm still currently employed, and my company has asked me to consider a move to China. Now, as you know, the country corruption index, and being over 60th position on that, does have implications on mortgage applications. China is in 78th position, level with Trinidad and Tobago. I've inquired with a couple of mortgage brokers. Essentially, the products available to me are cut down, and sometimes the loan to value is reduced as well. It seems like I've become a subprime finance customer overnight. My current HMO in development will be a 6-bed, so products were very limited to start with anyway, and I'm down to just one that will offer me products I require. And this might be a really difficult question, but is there any history of sudden changes in availability of mortgages for people who live abroad in certain countries? So, for example, if the political situation were to worsen between China and the UK, would that 60th position on the corruption index be a hard stop for mortgages, do you think? It's a tricky situation, but do you see any danger in accepting this move to China? My focus must be to try and build my business up. Finally, thanks again for your commitment and information over the last 10 years. It's been fantastic.
Hey, Adam, thank you. Thank you for your kind words. I completely understand the challenges that you're going through. Getting a mortgage when you're overseas can be a challenge. It depends where you live, as you've already identified, but it can be a challenge, and especially when you have more of a niche strategy like HMOs. So I don't think it's ever going to be easy. And I'm sure when you were in Singapore, you wouldn't have described it as easy either. Now, I'll say it, I'm sure you are, but I'm going to say it just in case. Use a broker who's a professional in this area. I'd be surprised if you're not already, but it's going to be almost impossible to do in your situation without one. So that's the first piece of advice I'd give for you and anybody listening. Beyond that, are things more likely to change? Possibly, but unlikely. The reason it's possible is that when financial markets boom, more products will, across the spectrum of finance, will come onto the market because there's a land grab and everybody wants their piece of the pie. In the last boom, and we're talking pre-2008, there were so many different types of mortgage products available. It was very, very easy to invest, whether if you're in the UK or overseas. Now, if we go into boom territory again, there probably would be a period of time where more products open up, even for the niche situation that you're in. However, that might not happen for a number of years yet, and I can't promise you it will happen. So waiting for that to take place as a strategy is probably not a good one. So what are your options? I would say, obviously, speak to a broker, but possibly consider moving away from your current strategy. This isn't an anti-HMO message, but because it is so niche and then moving to China, it's going to make lending very difficult. And I'm sure if you run the numbers with the increased finance costs that you'd have over HMO, and then a normal buy-to-let, you're probably not much better off in terms of return from the HMO when you take into the added costs. So I would go through that cost exercise. And if you're still keen to invest in property in the UK, then move to just standard lets. I know it's probably not the news that you wanted, but it's a different way of approaching things. Because if you can get the same return for a normal let, well then, obviously, it's a lot less work, so there's that benefit there. So no magic answer, Adam, but hopefully enough information to help you make better decisions.
Okay, there you go. Let's move on to our next international question.
Hi, Rob and Rob. Noel here. Big fan of the podcast. I've been listening to personal finance podcasts from across the pond in the US about their property market over there. Typically, to buy or sell a house in the States, you pay 6% commission through your realtor agent. And that 6% is split across the buyer's estate agent and the seller's estate agent. So a very different system, the UK, very much higher costs. And that has primarily been driven by the National Association of Realtors, which is the trade body for real estate agents over there. One of the courts, I think it's in Kansas City, Missouri, have blown that open, and there's major class actions against now the National Association of Realtors. They've had to pay $1.8 billion in payouts, and there may be additional amounts coming through. I'd just be interested to know, will that have an impact on the American property market? Because if you're taking the real estate agents no longer able to charge 6% and come down, gravitate down towards sort of the UK level of 1 to 1.5%, obviously that will mean there's cost that's come out of the process, and that could push up American house prices. Would that have a knock-on effect to the UK market? Because where America goes, England follows. Be interested in your thoughts on that. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Noel, thank you for your question. And this is a really interesting story. So for anyone who doesn't know, like Noel said, the commission that you pay realtors or estate agents in the US is way, way higher than we are used to. And it's normal for both the buyer and seller to be represented, and the fees get split between them. And while it's definitely true that the quality of service that you get in the US is much higher, it's also a bit of a racket. So the level of fees being charged is now being challenged. And there's a really good episode of NPR's excellent Planet Money podcast about this. So if you're interested in this story, just search Planet Money Realtors, and there's an episode called The Real Estate Industry on Trial that goes into this. For your actual question though, will this affect anything in the UK? I don't think so. Because you're right, if a load of cost suddenly disappeared from the process, you could expect that to have some effect on US house prices. I would say it's probably going to be marginal though, because remember, this is only affecting the fraction of properties that are actually being transacted in. Is it going to affect house prices in general? I'm not convinced. And while you are completely right that where the US goes, everyone else follows, I consider that to be more in terms of general economic cycles, rather than any factors that are particular to that market, unless they are enormous ones. You've also got to bear in mind that whenever this happens, if it happens, there may also be other offsetting factors. So, for example, there's talk about getting rid of a tax break in the US that allows people to roll their capital gains forward on real estate transactions. So that could be a force pulling prices down and counteracting what's happening here. So in summary, I'd say, is it going to have an effect in the US? Maybe. Is it going to be something large enough that it will come to the UK and you actually make a measurable difference that you can track back? Almost certainly not. But it is a really interesting story that's worth checking out. So thank you, Noel, for your question.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Noel. Great questions. Great to answer them. Really enjoyed this episode. It had an international flair, which makes a difference after 400 and something episodes. We will be back for hopefully something a bit different again next week with your questions, which will be beautiful, I'm sure. And of course, we're in the Sunday Times answering your questions, and back on Thursday with the Property Podcast. You do not want to miss it. Until then, take care, have fun. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.